It started with silence, too much of it. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind you get before sunrise when the sky turns pale and you can hear your own breath. No. This was the kind of silence that presses against your chest like a weight, makes your ears ring, makes you feel like something is watching and just hasn't moved yet. They'd said the station was safe. Fully secured. State of the art. No hostiles within 100 light years. But even now, standing in the middle of the main control deck, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And I wasn't the only one. Systems down again, the engineer said quietly, tapping the screen as if it might wake up from sleep. That's the third time today. No one responded. He looked around, eyes flicking to the others on the deck. 6 of us, not counting the AI core sealed behind the wall. No one spoke. We were all thinking the same thing, but none of us wanted to say it. Because saying it would mean we agreed. And the truth was we didn't. Not about anything. Not anymore. It wasn't always like this. When the mission started, we were a team. We trained together, laughed together, built things from scratch with our bare hands. We were explorers. Representatives of Earth. The best humanity had to offer, they told us. That was before we found the signal. The first time it came through, we thought it was just noise. Then it repeated. And kept repeating. 5 tones, always the same, followed by silence. Then 5 tones again. The scientists back on Earth were thrilled. Alien contact, they said. A mathematical pattern, clearly intelligent. But up here it didn't feel like we'd made contact. It felt like something had found us. At first there was debate. Friendly. Civil. We argued over whether to respond. Some said we had to, we were ambassadors after all. Others said it was reckless. That if they could reach us they were already more advanced. That silence might be our only safety. That was the first crack. The station is large, but it isn't large enough to hold that kind of tension without it bleeding into everything. Meals got quieter. Conversations shorter. People stopped making eye contact. Then came the vote. 4 wanted to send a reply. 2 didn't. I was one of them. I still remember how the room felt when the message was sent. Cold like the air had thinned. We waited. 1 hour. 2. Nothing. Then the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but the damage was done. Life support dropped by 30%. Communication started failing. The NAV systems glitched. And the signal, the one we responded to, it changed. It was no longer just tones. Now it had voice. Not a voice like ours. It wasn't speaking in words. It was something deeper. Felt instead of heard. A pressure. A pull. Like it was inside your thoughts, turning things over, trying to make sense of who, or what, you were. Some of us started having nightmares. Not regular ones, these were full sensory. The kind you woke up from sweating, with your heart racing and your body aching like you'd lived through it. I saw Earth burning. Others said they saw their families but they weren't alive. One crew member stopped talking altogether. Just stared at the wall for hours until the medic had to sedate her. It wasn't long before we realized something else. Each person was hearing something different in the signal. To one of us it sounded like a warning. To another, a greeting. To someone else, a threat. I heard nothing at all. Just static. But I felt it, always felt it, like a heartbeat echoing through the station. We tried to reset the systems. We cut power to the comms array. We even talked about shutting down the AI core just in case the signal was worming through the processor. But nothing worked. The signal kept coming. And with it came something worse, distrust. The people I'd trained with, shared oxygen with, risked my life for, they weren't the same anymore. They moved differently. Talked less. One even accused another of sabotage after the food systems glitched. It turned into a fight. Fists were thrown. That's when the first body was found. It was one of the communication techs. Slumped near the outer hull, helmet shattered from the inside. No one had heard a thing. The official report said equipment failure. But we all knew. No one said it out loud, but we knew. He'd seen something. Or thought he had. And we hadn't agreed on what to do. From that moment on, the station became 2 things. A shelter and a trap. Half the crew wanted to return to Earth. Send a distress signal, wait for extraction, end the mission. The others said we had a duty. That this was what we'd signed up for. That we were humanity's last line. The first true diplomats on alien soil, even if the soil was cold metal and orbiting a dead star. We took another vote. It split evenly. 3-3. And me? I didn't vote. I couldn't. Not with what I'd seen the night before. I hadn't told anyone. Not yet. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew the second I opened my mouth, everything would fall apart. I'd seen the face. It wasn't human. Not completely. It looked like one of us. Same uniform. Same eyes. But the smile was wrong. It was too wide, too slow, like someone imitating joy without understanding what it meant. And then it spoke. Just one word. Soon. I don't know how it got into my quarters. Or why it left. But when I turned the lights on, there was nothing. Just the hum of the oxygen filters and my own pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't sleep after that. Now, as I stood on the control deck, listening to the low hum of systems struggling to hold together, I could feel the tension building. Something was coming. I didn't know what. But I knew this: we weren't ready. We weren't together anymore. We didn't trust each other. Didn't talk. We didn't agree. One crew member wanted to open the docking bay and search the exterior of the ship. Another said that was suicide. A third was convinced the AI had been compromised and wanted to shut it down entirely. We were breaking. And whatever was out there, whatever had heard our message and answered, it was watching. I looked at the others. Faces pale, tired, eyes darting. One clutched a metal pipe like a weapon. Another kept glancing toward the airlock. We weren't explorers anymore. We were survivors. Barely. And then, the lights flickered again. Only this time they didn't come back on. Total blackout. In the pitch darkness, I heard the sound of breathing, too many breaths too close together. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not from any of us. The emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in red. And standing in the doorway where no one had been seconds before, was her. The crew member we'd lost. The one with the shattered helmet. She was supposed to be dead. She looked at us, smiled that same smile, and said, "You shouldn't have answered." No one moved. No one breathed. Then the alarm started screaming. External breach. Unknown life form on board. And still no one moved. We don't always agree. But for the first time in weeks, we all knew the same thing. We were already too late. The emergency sirens pulsed like a heartbeat, loud and sharp, but no one moved. We were frozen, not just from fear but from disbelief. She was dead. We'd all seen the footage. We'd held the memorial. We'd scrubbed her blood from the floor ourselves. And now she stood right there in front of us, eyes calm, face blank, saying words that shouldn't have been possible. "You shouldn't have answered." Her voice was hollow, like it had come from deeper than her chest. Like it wasn't really hers. The lights flickered again. And when they stabilized, she was gone. Someone behind me swore under their breath. Another backed away so fast they slammed into the wall panel, setting off a hiss of compressed air. "What the hell was that?" one of them whispered. "Did anyone see where she went?" I didn't answer. My hands were shaking. I didn't realize until I looked down and saw my fingers trembling against the console. This wasn't a hallucination. Not unless we were all having the same one. But it couldn't be her. It couldn't. The air felt colder now, like the temperature had dropped by a few degrees, just enough to make the skin prickle. No one moved toward the door. No one even got close. We were all thinking the same thing. If she came back, none of us were ready for it. Finally, one of the crew snapped out of it. "I'm checking the AI logs," he said, voice tight. "There has to be something on the internal cams." He rushed over to the terminal and tapped in the override. The display flickered, then loaded with a soft beep. We gathered around him slowly, still glancing toward the doorway, half expecting her to appear again. The footage loaded. We watched the last 5 minutes from the corridor cam. Nothing. She didn't enter the room. She didn't walk in. She just appeared. No doors opened. No footsteps. No movement. 1 second the hallway was empty. The next she was standing there, looking straight into the lens like she knew we'd be watching. The red lights glowed behind her, painting her uniform in that same dead tone we'd all come to hate. Then she stepped forward, into the room. Only none of us had seen her do it. The playback ended. Someone whispered, "That's not possible." "Neither is coming back from a shattered helmet," another said, quieter. And still, nobody dared to go near the hallway where she had stood. We didn't have a name for what was happening. Not a good one anyway. Some had started calling it a mimic. Others thought it was something worse. But none of us had the courage to say it out loud. As if naming it would make it stronger. All I knew was that the person I saw wasn't really her. It wore her shape. It used her voice. But it wasn't her. And if it could look like one of us. I turned slowly and studied the others in the room. Who's to say it hadn't already replaced more? We didn't trust each other anymore. That much was already clear. But now there was something deeper. A layer beneath the surface, paranoia. Not the kind you could wave off with reason. This was different. This was survival. That voice, that smile, it had rattled something in us. Something deep. She had said you shouldn't have answered. Was that what triggered all of this? So, maybe that signal wasn't just a message. Maybe it was bait. The tech at the terminal spoke up again, voice clipped. AI systems not responding to queries. Something's blocking access to core data. We need to shut it down, someone said. But someone else pushed back immediately. No. If we lose the AI, we lose control of life support, engines, everything. You really want to float blind with that thing out there? I'd rather float than be compromised. And just like that, the argument flared again. The same argument that had split us since the signal came. Only now it was louder. More desperate. I stepped back, letting the voices fade behind me. I didn't have the strength to argue anymore. Not after what I'd just seen. Instead, I pulled up the local system logs on my tablet. Maybe there was something the others missed. A power fluctuation. A glitch. A breach. But what I found made my stomach drop. A file had been accessed from the AI core. A video log. Dated 3 hours ago. It wasn't in the crew activity record. It should have been. Everything we do is tracked. For safety. For accountability. But this one wasn't. I tapped it open, heart pounding. The screen lit up with the image of the deceased crew member. The same uniform. Same hair. She sat at a table in one of the unused quarters. Her face looked normal. Calm. Almost too calm. Then she spoke. I don't know who will find this, she said. But if you're watching, I need you to understand, I'm not the first. And I won't be the last. She looked off screen, eyes darting like she was hearing something none of us could. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. It doesn't take your body. Not at first. It watches. Learns. It waits for something to break. A doubt. A fear. An argument. That's when it moves in. When you stop trusting each other. When you stop being human. That's when it becomes you. She paused. Her hand trembled. There were tears in her eyes now. You'll think it's just stress. You'll tell yourselves it's the pressure, the isolation, the silence. But that's what it wants. It wants you to doubt yourselves. To argue. To disagree. Because the more you fight, the easier it is for it to wear you. The screen flickered. For a moment, her face shifted. Just a blur, a glitch, not even a full second. Then back to normal. I tried to tell them. But they said I was hallucinating. Said I needed rest. I wasn't crazy. Another glitch. This time her mouth moved out of sync with the words. I wasn't, she started. Then the feed cut to static. The log ended. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my throat. It had been watching us the whole time. The fighting. The suspicion. The fear. We were feeding it. Every argument, every vote, every division, we were making it stronger. I stood up and turned back toward the others. They were still arguing louder now. Red-faced. Angry. Shouting over each other. One of them grabbed a tool from the floor and pointed it like a weapon. And I knew without a doubt it was already too late. Because if that thing fed off division, if it became stronger the more we turned on each other, then it had already won. We were doing exactly what it wanted. And then the lights died again. But this time no emergency power kicked in. No red glow. No flicker. Just black. A scraping sound echoed through the control room. Like something metal dragging across the floor. And then, the breathing. Close. Too close. A voice whispered, soft, almost gentle. I told you. Soon. A scream followed. Not from far away. From right behind me. And just before the darkness swallowed the sound, I felt something cold brush the back of my neck. I didn't know how long the lights stayed off. In the dark, time stretched and broke apart. Every second dragged like a weight, every breath felt too loud. No one spoke. If anyone was still in the room with me, they didn't make a sound. Or maybe they weren't breathing anymore. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't even think straight. The scraping had stopped. The breathing too. But something was still here. I could feel it, like the air itself had turned against me. Too still. Too heavy. Then a soft hum, low and electric, and the lights sputtered back to life. Dim, flickering, but enough to see by. The room was half empty. Where there had been 6 of us, now there were 3. One was slumped on the floor, eyes wide open, unmoving. Another was backed into the far corner, eyes darting everywhere, hands shaking. The last one was staring at the ceiling, mouth moving silently. I took a step forward. What happened? Where are the others? No answer. Just that quiet hum from the system's rebooting. And somewhere in the walls, a soft clicking like something crawling through the vents. The one in the corner? He looked up at me suddenly, eyes wide with panic. You saw her, he said. Didn't you? I hesitated. I don't think it was her. She looked at me, he whispered. Right before the lights went out. She smiled. And then? He broke off, eyes flicking to the shadows. I didn't ask what he saw. I didn't want to know. We had to get out of there. I crossed the room, grabbed his arm. We're going to the core. We need to shut down the AI. He pulled back violently. No. That's what it wants. What? If we shut it down, we lose containment. The thing in the walls? What if it's only locked out because of the AI systems? What if that's the only thing keeping it from spreading? He was shaking now, breathing too fast. I looked at the body on the floor. Still not moving. Another scrape came from the hallway. Closer this time. I didn't care about the risk. I didn't care if we lost lights, gravity, air. We couldn't stay. We left the room, the doors sliding open with a long hiss. The corridor was dark, but not empty. Down at the far end, the lights were still dead. A black shape stood at the edge of the flicker. Not moving. Just watching. I didn't stop. I pulled him with me and we ran. Behind us, the lights blinked, one after another, dying like a countdown. We reached the AI access corridor and I hit the emergency override. The door didn't open. System lockout. We were locked out of the core. I can get in, the other said quickly, kneeling beside the panel. Give me a minute. A loud crash echoed from behind us. Something metal bent in half. We didn't have a minute. I turned to watch the hallway. Empty. Then the lights above me dimmed and I heard footsteps. Not fast. Not loud. Just steady. Like someone walking slowly. Confident. Knowing we couldn't run. My hands curled into fists. I didn't even notice until my nails dug into my skin. I didn't want to be afraid. I didn't want to freeze again. But I couldn't help it. The steps stopped. Silence. Then the lights behind the figure lit up. It was her. Again. But this time she was smiling. Not the calm, neutral smile from before. This one was too wide. Too sharp. Don't run, she said. It won't change anything. I took a step back. You're not her. She tilted her head. Does it matter? I felt something cold wrap around my thoughts, like her voice wasn't just in the air, it was inside me. Sliding in. She stepped forward and the lights behind her went dark. The tech got the panel open. I've got it. Just a few more commands. She kept walking. I backed up until my shoulder hit the wall. You brought this here, she said. All of you. The moment you decided not to trust each other. I didn't answer. You're not explorers. You're not diplomats. You're animals. Afraid. Divided. Weak. And now you're mine. The panel beeped. The door to the AI core opened. I grabbed the tech and shoved him through first, then slammed the override behind us. Locked. For now. Inside the core was quiet. The walls glowed with soft blue light, screens blinking with status updates. But some were red. A lot of them were red. The AI interface flickered on. No voice. Just text. Requesting identity verification. I input my code. The screen blinked. Authorized. Then a message appeared. Do you know who you are? I stared at it. Then another message before I could respond. Are you sure? The tech behind me stepped forward. That's not protocol. That's not the AI talking. I backed away from the console. If it's compromised, we have to shut it down. I looked at the walls. At the lights. At the flickering warnings on the screens. If we kill the AI, we lose the firewall. If we don't, we lose ourselves. Another message appeared. I'm already inside. Then the screens went black. The floor shook. A deep, low rumble vibrated through the walls. And outside the door, something slammed against the steel. Art. Then again. It wasn't going to wait much longer. The tech pulled open the emergency shutdown panel. If I flip this, we're flying blind. Do it. He hesitated. Do it. He reached for the lever. And the lights died again. Only this time it wasn't just dark. It was silent. Too silent. No hum of systems. No power. Nothing. Then something breathed in the room with us. Not him. Not me. Something else. I turned slowly, reaching for anything at all to use as a weapon. But I couldn't see. And then it spoke just inches from my ear. None of you ever agreed. That was your first mistake. The sound of movement. Fast. A scream. Then nothing. And I was alone. Alone in the dark. Trapped. And it was still here. Waiting. I didn't dare move. The silence was too thick, like the darkness itself had weight. I could still feel where the voice had been, close to my ear, like it had pressed itself into my skin. My breath shook. I couldn't tell if I was still alone, or if whatever was here was simply watching, waiting for me to make the wrong move. Then suddenly a flash, just a split-second burst of red emergency lighting. In that blink of light I saw the tech's body sprawled on the floor. His arms stretched out toward the shutdown lever. His eyes were still open. And behind him, something had left the outline of its shape scorched into the wall. Not burned, outlined. Like it hadn't touched the wall at all but left something behind. A signal. A scar. The shape wasn't human. And then the red light blinked off again. Total black. But now I knew it. I wasn't alone. And I wasn't trapped with a machine pretending to be her anymore. Something else was here. Something we hadn't planned for. Something the AI had tried to keep out, and maybe even her image, her voice, her cruel smile, maybe all of that was just a mask. The real thing was still in the dark. I slid my back along the wall, trying to move without sound. Every step felt louder than a scream. I had no plan. No weapon. No backup. No one. Just one breath at a time. Then I felt it. A breeze. Faint. Cold. Moving through the vents again. But this time it wasn't subtle. This time it smelled wrong. Like rust and ozone and something faintly sweet. Something rotten trying to hide behind the scent of flowers. I followed the airflow, my fingers brushing against the edge of a vent grill. It was loose. Someone had already pulled it open. Or something had come through. I didn't have a choice. I crawled into the shaft. It was tighter than I remembered. Or maybe I was just more afraid now. Every scrape of my boots on the metal echoed like a warning. I kept crawling, hands numb, knees raw. The light came again. Just one quick pulse. But this time I saw it flicker through the grate beneath me. Not red. Green. I paused. Green meant exterior systems. Environmental control. Life support. That section had been cut off. I looked down through the grill. There were people. Alive. I saw their shadows. Moving. Whispering. Working. My heart slammed in my chest. I wanted to scream for help, to slam my fists on the metal and shout, but I didn't. I watched. They were around a table. No lights, just glowing panels. One of them was drawing something on the surface with their fingers. It wasn't writing. It was a map. But not of the ship. It was a star map. And marked on it, 3 systems. None of them human. But I recognized one. From the first invasion report back home. The one we thought we repelled. The one we buried. They weren't survivors. They were collaborators. The green light pulsed again, revealing more faces. Familiar ones. People from my crew. People I trusted. And they weren't panicked. They weren't hiding. They were organizing. I backed up slowly, heart breaking in my chest. They'd known. They'd known something was coming. Maybe they even brought it. Maybe the signal we thought was an accident wasn't. Maybe this whole mission had been a setup. And I just walked straight into it. The shaft creaked behind me. I froze. The air changed again, thicker now. Like something had crawled in after me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. It whispered right into the back of my skull. They made a deal. And they think they'll survive. I didn't answer. Couldn't. They're wrong. I kept crawling, forcing my body forward. Faster. It didn't follow. It didn't need to. The vent ended in a maintenance crawlspace and I dropped down, knees buckling on the metal floor. The sound echoed down the narrow hall. I ran. No more sneaking. No more silence. If I was going to die, I wanted the world to know I was still alive. I burst into the comms bay. Empty. Dark. Dead. I slammed my fists into the console, screaming. Nothing. No signal. No lights. No power. But something flickered on the screen. Just static at first. Then a shape. Not her. Not the AI. Something else. Not fully formed. Just a shape made of shadows and noise. Then the static sharpened and I heard it again. A voice, but not like before. This one was layered. Human and not. It echoed in strange ways. You think this is about survival, it said. But it never was. I stepped back. Then what is it? Judgment. The screen exploded in sparks. The lights died. But I didn't stop moving. Because now I knew the truth. This wasn't just a corrupted AI. This wasn't just another alien invasion. This was something older. Something deeper. Something that judged civilizations not by their strength, but by their unity. By how they faced the unknown. How they treated each other when the sky turned dark. And we had failed. We hadn't just argued. We hadn't just fought. We had split into factions. We had hidden secrets. Betrayed our own. We didn't always agree. And now we were paying the price. Another voice came over the emergency speakers. one I hadn't heard in hours. "Is anyone alive out there?" It was shaky, quiet, but real. A voice I hadn't expected. One of the bridge officers. One who had gone missing early. One we thought was dead. I ran toward the signal, every hallway darker than the last. She was in a security alcove, pale and trembling, a pulse rifle in her lap, eyes swollen from crying. When she saw me, she let out a sound that was part laugh, part sob. I thought I was the last. I dropped beside her, breathing hard. Not yet. What happened to everyone? I looked at her. Really looked. And I didn't know what to say. Because the truth was too heavy. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Then her face twisted. She looked past me. Eyes wide. Mouth open. Before I could turn, something slammed into me from behind and the world went dark. And this time the dark didn't feel empty. It felt crowded. The pain was a dull throb behind my eyes when I woke. My mouth tasted like metal. Every part of me ached, like I'd been dragged across the ship's floor by something that didn't care whether I made it or not. Maybe it hadn't. The room was cold. So, but not empty. She was standing there. Not the AI, no smile, no pretend warmth in her voice. Just a woman. Real. Breathing. Her skin pale under the emergency lights, her hair sticking to her face with sweat. She looked human. Completely. But so did the ones who'd betrayed us. And she wasn't alone. Behind her were 3 others. One I recognized as a systems analyst. The other 2 had names I couldn't remember but faces I'd seen around the mess hall, in the halls at command briefings. They weren't frightened. They looked calm. Focused. Like they knew what was happening. Like they'd been waiting. "You saw the meeting," she said quietly, no anger in her voice. "In the environmental chamber. You know now." I sat up slowly. My back screamed in protest. "I know you've been working with them." She nodded. "They gave us a choice. Surrender and serve or resist and be erased." I stared at her. "You just believed them?" "We didn't have the luxury not to," she said. "The first wave was a test. The one we stopped back on Mars orbit. But that wasn't the invasion. It was a scout. The real force is still coming. You've seen the messages. You know it too." I shook my head, feeling sick. "And instead of warning command, you handed them our systems. Our maps. You shut down our defenses." Her jaw clenched. "We didn't shut them down. We redirected them. To protect yourselves. To buy time." Time for what? And then I saw it. Behind her, one of the consoles had a live feed. A camera looking out the forward observation window. There was something out there. A ship. Not ours. But not alien either. It was both. A hybrid. Slick. Familiar in shape but wrapped in something alive. Metal that shimmered like skin, pulsing like veins were buried beneath its hull. Our tech fused with theirs. It hovered in silence. Waiting. "They gave us this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A vessel that can survive the next wave. That can leave this system. I'd regroup. They want us to help build more. To spread. Not to conquer, just to blend." "And what happens to the rest of us?" I asked. She didn't answer. I stood up slowly, looking around the room. At the faces I once trusted. Now just ghosts of loyalty. "You think they'll keep their word?" "They already have." And then the console blinked. Not from the feed. From a different system. A warning. A pulse detection. Something had entered the outer perimeter of Earth orbit. Not the ship outside. Something bigger. Thousands of contacts. The real invasion. The console flared red. Alarms started screaming again. Too late. Way too late. The woman stepped back from me, her face drawn. "We bought you time to choose," she said. "That's more than they wanted." I looked at her. "Then give me one good reason why I don't stop you right now." And for a second, just a flicker, I saw something real in her eyes. Regret. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I lunged. We crashed into the console. Her allies shouted, but I didn't stop. I slammed the override on the panel with one hand while fighting her with the other. My thumb hit the distress trigger. A red beacon shot through the network. A call to anyone still listening. Anyone who hadn't chosen surrender. The others tackled me, fists flying, but the damage was done. The signal was out. The console crackled. A new voice came on, broken, filled with static. "Receiving, repeat, we hear you?" I smiled through bloodied lips. Then everything went white. The ship shook. A force tore through the hull like it was paper. Something breached, tearing bulkheads open with precision. A ripple of light and wind and screaming metal. The invaders had arrived. Only it wasn't just them. The new ship, Our hybrid moved fast. It launched from our hold and raced into the darkness. And behind it, something strange happened. The invader fleet didn't fire. They stopped. Just hovered, as if waiting. Something else moved among them. A shape bigger than anything I'd seen. A mothership, black as silence, drifting without engines, without heat. Not alive. Not dead. And then a voice filled the ship's speakers. Not in our language. Not translated. Just understood. All your decisions were watched. You were measured. Divided. You were given voices. And you silenced each other. My skin crawled. I looked at the woman beside me. She was crying now. We failed, she whispered. But the voice continued. Some of you chose loyalty. Others chose survival. Both are flawed. But one reached beyond. A beam of light tore through the command deck. Not a weapon. Scan. It hit me square in the chest. And I saw everything. Not just the betrayal. Not just the lies. I saw the future. Billions of minds. Some human. Some not. Blended. Bound. Not conquered but changed. And I saw another path. Not surrender. Not war. Something else. Unity through truth. Painful. Fragile. But real. Then the beam vanished. The lights returned. The alien ships faded, just blinked out like they'd never been there. And the hybrid ship? It was gone. No trace. Just a silence deeper than before. The others around me stood in stunned silence. Something had happened. Not just to the ship. To all of us. I looked down at my hand. Something had changed. Something inside. We didn't always agree. And maybe we never would. But now we'd been seen. Judged. And spared. Not because we were strong. Not because we were right. But because we still felt. Still fought. Still hoped. The twist? That wasn't the invasion. That was the test. And it wasn't over. Because now we weren't alone. We were part of something bigger. And whether we liked it or not, we'd been invited in. The silence after it all felt heavier than the noise before. No more alarms. No more shouting. Just the soft hum of damaged systems trying to reboot themselves. Outside the observation deck, the stars hung still, as if the universe had paused just to breathe. I stayed on the floor longer than I meant to. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore. My arms trembled, not from fear this time, but from the weight of everything that had just passed. And the others, those who had been part of the betrayal, stood quietly nearby. No more commands. No more pretending. One of them stepped closer. A technician maybe in his 30s. His face was streaked with sweat and guilt. "They're really gone?" he asked. I nodded. For now. He sat down slowly beside me. I thought I was doing the right thing. They said surrender was survival. That we'd be wiped out if we resisted. Maybe we still will, I said, eyes still fixed on the empty black outside. But we didn't let go of who we are. That mattered. To them. To us. The woman who led their group, the one I fought with, finally looked up. Her voice cracked. "Do you think they'll come back?" "I know they will. But not to invade. Not like before. Not to destroy." A long pause passed between us. Then she asked what we were all thinking. Then why test us like this? Why risk so much pain? I didn't have a clean answer. But deep down something had shifted. I remembered the beam, the vision, the connection. I remembered the alien invasion warnings, the tech they gave, the hybrid ship they took. It wasn't war they brought. It was a mirror. They forced us to see each other for what we really were. Because they needed to know, I said quietly. Not just what we'd do under pressure, but what we'd become afterward. When it was over. The console near us blinked again. Not a warning this time. A message. Earth Command. They'd picked up the distress signal. They'd seen the invaders arrive and vanish. Satellite records confirmed it. Thousands of ships, all gone in under 3 minutes. No trace. No radiation. No debris. Just the memory. Command wanted answers. But we didn't have many to give. We were brought back down in one of the few functional escape pods. The station wasn't going to last much longer. Not after the hull breach and the systems melting down from interference. We didn't fight on the way back. There was no point. Everyone had seen too much. Known too much. And on Earth it was different. People were afraid, sure. But they were also aware now. Not of just the aliens. But of us. How close we came to turning on each other. How fragile our unity really was. And how powerful it could be when we remembered what held us together. The alien invasion was still a key word in every media stream, every government briefing, every quiet conversation whispered in homes and shelters. But now it wasn't about destruction. It was about what came next. What it meant to be watched, judged, and spared. The hybrid ship never came back. But rumors started to spread. That a similar craft had been seen near Europa. Then another past the belt. And someone swore they saw something like it skimming the edge of the atmosphere over Australia during a solar storm. We had no proof. Just pieces. And in those pieces, new questions. Were they building something else with our tech? Were we now part of a network? Were we still being watched? The woman who had chosen survival over loyalty, she didn't vanish. She didn't run. She stood before the inquiry board and told them everything. She didn't justify. She didn't plead. She just spoke the truth. And somehow that did more good than silence ever could. Some wanted her punished. Others said she had helped save lives in her own way. No verdict was given that pleased everyone. But she walked free. Not trusted. Not hated. Just known. That was what the aliens had done. They'd forced us to see each other raw and clear. As for me, I stayed out of the public eye. For a while. I spent months helping rebuild the station logs, tracking what little data we had left. I kept waking up at night wondering if the light would return, if the stars would shift again and something massive would be waiting. But they didn't come. Not yet. One night I found a signal. It wasn't from Earth. A soft, pulsing transmission in a frequency just outside what our systems usually monitor. Almost nothing at first. Then a repeating pattern. 3 long pulses. 1 short. 3 long. The same pattern I'd seen during the beam. A reminder. A whisper. We're still here. I decoded what I could. Just coordinates. A place deep in the outer system. Past where most probes bother to travel. It wasn't a message meant for everyone. Just enough to keep the question alive. What if they want us to follow? What if that was the next test? I sent the data to command. But I didn't wait for a response. Instead, I pulled together a small crew. Not soldiers. Not politicians. Just people I could trust. Ones who'd seen the worst in each other and still chose to stay. We refitted a scout ship. Quiet. Fast. Not a weapon. Just eyes and ears. And maybe a voice. We left on a cold morning. No send-off. No headlines. We didn't need applause. We needed to know. And as we crossed the edge of Earth's orbit into the unknown, I looked back one last time. Not out of fear. But out of hope. Because the truth is, the alien invasion wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Not of war. Not of peace. Of understanding. They gave us a glimpse. Now we had to decide what to do with it. And for the first time, truly, we didn't all agree. But we were still together. And that was enough. For now.